Tonight, Detroit's Mayor-elect Mike Duggan sits down with us for a candid conversation. Stay tuned, it's all coming up on MiWeek.
Michigan's turnaround is being powered by things we do better than anywhere else in the world. Today's global leaders routinely turn to Michigan to work on their most difficult problems. That's because the engineering talent in this part of the world is simply the best. So many possibilities lie ahead for Michigan's future. These opportunities are here and starting to happen. The vision for the new Michigan. Share it, talk it up, drive it home. Funding is also provided by Delta.
Welcome to MiWeek. I'm Stephen Henderson, editorial page editor of the Detroit Free Press. I'm sitting in for Christy McDonald, who's off tonight. We're at our Midtown studios in Detroit. It's been just over 3 weeks since the city elected a new mayor, an election some have called one of the most important in the city's history. But with an emergency manager in place and the validity of the bankruptcy soon to be decided, what exactly will be Mayor Mike Duggan's role? Tonight we sit down with Duggan and discuss his plans for the city's future. I'm joined tonight by my counterpart at the Detroit News, editorial page editor Nolan Finley, and our special guest tonight, Mayor-elect Mike Duggan. Welcome back to the set.
Well, thanks for having me.
Let's start with this. Kevin Orr told me last week that he imagined the roles that would be carved out for you as bigger than a COO plus some other things. You've been talking with him about how this will work come January. Is that the impression that you get?
You know, if it's a COO plus role, we won't have any trouble working it out. So, you know, I don't like the fact there's an emergency manager here, but reality is what it is, and under the emergency manager law, he has the authority to assume all responsibility or delegate some part of it, and obviously I feel like the voters elected me because they wanted city services to get improved in a hurry, and if I've got broad enough authority to do that, I will sign up for it, and a COO plus role would work.
What would you say is the most important thing for you to have some say over come January?
Well, I don't think there's any question the driving issue in the city is public safety, and we have got to go after the police response time. But those are things that we're still working through, and whether I will be responsible for public safety or not is something that has not been resolved. So, you know, we're going through it, you know, issue by issue, and hopefully in the next 2 weeks we'll have a formal agreement that would get reduced to an order that the emergency manager would enter.
So when you think about what a COO would do, what's it look like to you, and what would the plus be?
Well, I'm not sure what the plus is, but you know, I spent 14 years as a deputy county executive. I was a COO, so I know exactly what a COO is. But you know, I want the ability to go in and deal with the fact that these street light repairs are too darn slow. I want to be able to straighten out. Right now, we got about 7 different cooks in the blight kitchen. We need to have a single blight strategy, and I had the opportunity to sit down with Dan Gilbert in the last week. What he's doing on the blight authority is just phenomenal. If we can corral all the different people doing things and go to a single Department of Neighborhoods, as I outlined in the campaign, I think we can make an impact on the quality of life of the neighborhoods in the first year. So I want to have enough authority to be able to do those things, respecting that I'm going to have to operate within Mr. Orr's budget. I have to operate in a way that does not disrupt what's going on in his litigation, bankruptcy, and to the extent he's set up frameworks and collective bargaining agreements, or to the extent he wants to sign off on major appointments, those things are all fine. And so something along those lines could conceivably work.
So you mentioned collective bargaining agreements. Should you be the one negotiating with the union, since you're the one who's going to have to live with the contracts long term?
You know, there's 2 ways to look at it. One is that the emergency manager is putting forward a plan of adjustment to the bankruptcy court, which has to be accepted by the judge, and we don't get out of bankruptcy. And so he certainly has an intense interest in making sure that those agreements fit within his parameters. I have an intense agreement to make sure that we can afford them in the long run. So our interests are probably aligned. But if I were the emergency manager, I would want to sign off on these agreements because I've got an obligation to live up to my representations to the court. So those kinds of conversations are the kinds of discussions we're having. They're all professional, they're all rational, but it's It's very complicated and it's very detailed. We're trying to work through it.
Are you talking principally with Kevin, or are you also talking with Governor Snyder, who I know wants to have a pretty active role in shaping this partnership?
You know, I'm talking to both, but it's very clear that the emergency manager is in charge, and just as the statute suggests, he really is in charge, and ultimately, I believe the emergency manager is going to decide
So
what
you
this looks
don't
like.
get a sense that Lansing's pulling the strings and calling the shots here?
You know, it's hard for me to tell what goes on when I'm not in the room, but my conversations with the governor have been very constructive, and I see lots of ways for the city and state to partner, and I feel very good about that.
What about talent? We hired a new CFO last week. It seemed like somebody
Right.
who we should be pleased to see come to Detroit, but it also seemed pretty clear that was Kevin's pick.
I would not, again, I don't think so. I think the CFO worked out ideally.
Yeah.
Which is, I sat in on the main interview.
Okay.
I was totally impressed. I spent 2 hours with him. And after an hour, I said to him, I don't want you to think of this in terms of 6 months or 8 months for an emergency manager. I'd like you to think in terms of being the CFO for the next 4 years. Mr. Hill is just phenomenal. He headed up the oversight board when Washington, D.C. Was under an emergency manager. He talked to me about how he got citizens positively engaged, which is something I've seen lacking here in our particular situation. But I've dealt with a lot of CFOs, both in the private sector and the public sector, and Mr. Hill was far better than what I would have expected us to be able to attract as a public sector CFO. So we made the offer together. My understanding is Mr. Hill insisted on hearing from me before he made a decision. And so the reason that we announced it jointly was Mr. Orr has indicated he wants him here for his tenure. I've indicated to Mr. Hill I want him here for my tenure, and this truly was an example of what working together could produce.
What about talent and the rest of the administration? I mean, you've got a lot of jobs to fill. It's unclear as of yet, I guess, how many of them that you'll get to fill by January. How's that all going?
You know, we've got a transition office open in Cadillac Towers. There's a dozen people working, 60 and 80-hour weeks assessing that talent and the like. And so we'll know the details, but obviously I expect to be the person primarily recruiting the cabinet. We have got to shift from this consultant-based government that we have today to getting the permanent people in place who are going to start to run the departments.
So if you were given a larger role, do you believe you could get rid of some of those consultants who are quite expensive for the city? Do you think you can replace them with folks who might serve you long term?
I think we need to start transitioning down so that every month that goes by on the operational side, I'm not talking about the ones supporting the bankruptcy litigation, but the consultants supporting the day-to-day operations, I'd like to see us to start to phase down that money and put your money into the permanent people who will be running the departments. And yes, I do think I can phase it down.
What about the city's finances and the money for the restructuring? We saw that the state has said they're only going to pay $5 million, so they're going to cap their contribution at that. Kevin has moved some other money into restructuring. How much of that do you agree with? How much of that might you change?
You know, I haven't gotten into it enough. I still need to see what form that 50-50 agreement took. Is it in writing? Is it specific? Now they're saying we only meant 50-50 on some, but I haven't looked at it carefully enough to give you an informed answer on that.
Now, you and Kevin Orr both have strong personalities, and you both are used to being the guy in charge. Do you know enough about him? Do you know him well enough now to know whether you can have this sort of good working relationship that you can get along on a day-to-day basis?
You know, time is going to tell, but I spent 14 years as a COO, as deputy county executive. I spent the last 12 years as CEO, both as prosecutor and as CEO of the Detroit Medical Center. I understand very clearly the role between the two, and the emergency financial manager law in this state makes Kevin Orr the CEO. I understand the difference between the roles, and so the answer is, if there's a clear COO structure, I'll live with it as I did for 14 years before. I don't have a problem professionally operating under that structure.
Are the things an emergency manager can do better than the mayor at this point, make some of the political decisions and what have you, that you might not want to take the heat for?
Yeah, taking the heat doesn't bother me at all. So no, I don't see that there's any value laying the blame on somebody else to do the right thing. I'm perfectly willing to do the right thing and explain why. So
you mentioned earlier that you really want to get after police and police response time. I mean, everybody agrees that's a huge priority. how do we do that? I mean, given the number of police we have, given the shortage of resources in the department, is that something that you feel like can be accomplished in a short window of time?
You know, I came into the Detroit Medical Center when it was 3 to 4 hours to see a doctor in an emergency room, and 4 months later we were seeing virtually everybody in 29 minutes because we tore the process apart. I have questions about the dispatch system. I have questions about how long it takes to drop prisoners off at the lockup. There are a whole series of practices that I believe that we could change that would allow the officers to spend more of their shift on the street responding and less of their shift into other bureaucratic responsibilities. And so I would go after it by tearing apart the process. I think we can shorten the police response time with the staff we have.
So we also saw Chief Craig make a big show, really, of a very aggressive move against an apartment building where he said there was, more calls, I guess, than they were getting from other places. Have you talked to him yet about that as a strategy? Is that the kind of strategy that you think will work in Detroit?
I think the raids were great police work by the Detroit Police Department. Here's what I'd like to see, and what you used to see 10 years ago when I was a prosecutor, is the next day or the day after, we would say, of the 30 people who were arrested, here's how many had federal gun crimes that had been flipped to the feds. Here's how many were state probation or parole violators and the state's taken them back to prison. Here's a number charged by the county prosecutor. Here's a number still in jail today. And so
it's that follow-up.
I think what
important.
Chief Craig did was excellent on the raid. I don't see all the other police agencies stepping up 24 or 48 hours later and saying, here's what we did as a follow-up. Maybe they have and they haven't announced it, but that would be what I would contribute. I think Chief Craig's doing a fine job. I don't see the other agencies pulled together in a single united strategy the way we had 10 years ago, and I'd like to see us get back to that.
Is the chief moving with the same sort of urgency you would expect if he were working for you?
He's done a number of things right. I think the changes he's made in the leadership of the department have made it more professional. I think he's improved the morale of the officers. I think he's moved very effectively on those fronts. Now we're to the point there that you've got a professional management team, you got better morale. Now can we take the next step? And I think now's what he's going to be judged on, and if I'm responsible, what I would be judged on.
Are you sensing from your residents that they feel a difference?
No. As far as the experience in the neighborhood, the safety, no, it hasn't changed. But
how long before you feel like people will feel like things are better or they're safer?
I think in the first year, you can go after these gun crimes aggressively. You can shut down these drug houses, seize them, not just raid them over and over. Get the feds involved on these gun crimes. I know Barb McQuaid has expressed a willingness, and they're doing some of it, not nearly to the extent that they have in places like New York and Richmond, where they had huge effects on the violence. And so you can have an effect in the first year.
Now, at best, Detroit solves about 10% of it, or 30% of its murders. At worst, 10%. A lot of people who commit murder in Detroit go unpunished. You were a former prosecutor. Do you have ideas or thoughts on how you get that conviction rate up so people know they can't get away with murder in Detroit?
And again, if you go back to 2001 when I started, we put together a cold case task force that involved the state police, the FBI, the Detroit police, the prosecutor, the attorney general, and we went back on cases that were 6 months, a year, 2, 3 years old, solved them, and what we found was the people who got away with it a year or two ago were still committing murders today. And so when we put that targeted energy in it helped contribute to reducing the murder rate. And so there's no doubt that clearing homicides is a high priority, and it needs to be a high priority.
So tell us about something that surprised you since the election. Your whole world has to have changed in some ways. Tell me about something that's unexpected.
I got a call from HUD Secretary Sean Donovan, who calls and says, "Can I have dinner with you?" Which never happened to me before.
Didn't happen before.
So a half hour before dinner, he calls me and says, "Kathleen Sebelius, the HHS secretary, is going to be in town. Do you mind if she joins us?" And so I ended up at a 3-hour dinner with 2 cabinet officers who came in to see me to talk about what we could do for the city of Detroit. The level of interest in this country to help this city is enormous. We need to be competent enough to take advantage of that help and actually change the quality of life.
Well, isn't that one of your first priorities then when you do get some responsibility, or when you do take office, a lot of pent-up demand or pent-up desire to help Detroit from both the National Foundation communities and the federal government, and yet there's still not confidence amongst either community that Detroit can use the money well.
one of the most critical things that we've got to accomplish in a transition team, we don't have it done yet, but I expect we will in the next 6 weeks, is how do we accept help? And it's not just foundations. There's lots of people offering their time. There's lots of companies volunteering talent. There are different companies saying, hey, I might want to come invest in Detroit. I need to find a way that when they call you, you don't say, I'll get back to you, which they've heard for years, but to say, here's how you can help and let me have this person get in touch with you. And I've got to complete that in the next 6 weeks.
So right before the election, I think it was in the last debate, you said that you would like to see by year 4 Detroit's population going up, which would be, I think it was the boldest promise you made, frankly, during the campaign. I mean, we have not seen population increase in this city since I think 1958 or 9. What should Detroit citizens see or look at to say that's possible, that could happen in the first 4 years?
I expect it to happen. I mean, I will consider my run a failure if by the 4th year the population in the city is not growing. And I have a very clear idea how I want to get there. We all know that downtown, midtown, riverfront, large numbers of people are moving in. But they're moving out of the neighborhoods a whole lot faster than people are coming in. But if I could in the first year get the police response time down, get the street lights starting to come on, and get the abandoned buildings starting to be dealt with. Not that it's all solved, but that people see it's happening. You got people who think that they can't sell their house for half of what it's worth, but they're bailing out in the city anyway. If they see the cops starting to show up, the streetlights coming on, they'll say, you know what, I'll wait another year. I'll hang in here another year. When we hit that point, everything's going to start to turn. And when we stabilize the quality of life of the neighbors and people start to stay with all the areas we have people moving in, I do think it is very much achievable by year 4 the population of this city starts to grow again.
Okay, well, we'll have to see 4 years from now. We'll hold you to that.
Well, you probably got a tape up.
That's right, now it's on tape.
We're going to be playing that every 6 months.
We'll be back with more My Week in a minute. And joining Nolan and me now is our good friend Craig Fahle, who's the host of the Craig Fahle Show at WDET Radio. Tell me, what do you see, Craig, as the top priority for the new Duggan administration?
That's a loaded question. There are so many different places he needs to address right off the bat. I think the most important thing that he can do is put together a plan that people can actually look at and see some of the results of. If that's a way of getting more police officers on the streets right off the bat, so people at least feel that there's an attempt being made to address that huge issue, I think that's really, really important for him to do, just to show them that he actually cares about the neighborhoods and their safety. That's number one.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. He's got to present a sense of urgency, a sense of motion and action, because people are leaving. They've lost confidence in the city. They don't feel safe. And they're not going to stay if they don't see some hope.
Do you feel like Chief Craig has already sort of kick-started that sense of urgency with these raids, with some of the more high-profile statements he's made, or do we need more?
Yeah, we talked to Mike Duggan about that. I'm not sure that one or two raids is enough. I think people need to look out their door and see cops driving by. And I think whatever he's doing, he needs to crow about it a little more, so people know, both the people who live here and the criminals know that there's been a change. And I don't know that as Duggan said, I don't know that it's gotten down into the neighborhoods yet, this sense that something has changed.
Well, and Chief Craig seems to still be in this sort of discovery phase about exactly how big the problem is. The few times that I've had him on the program talking about it, there's, I don't want to say deer in the headlights feel to it, but I think he's somewhat astounded as to the level of the problem that he's dealing with here.
I think everybody gets shocked when they actually come here and
but
get on the ground
snap
and
out of
see
that pretty
how
fast.
bad things are.
But if you look at the lawlessness in the city and the number of people who commit crimes and they never get prosecuted, if we had a multi-agency task force, as Duggan suggested during our interview, if we had a multi-agency task force attacking unsolved serious crimes, so that all these people who've been getting away with murder and other crimes, now all of a sudden somebody's knocking on their door and dragging them in, it would send an important message.
Yeah.
I think so too, and he also needs to prioritize which neighborhoods are going to get that kind of treatment. Those neighborhoods that are on the cusp of either failing or succeeding, focus on those places like
go there and tip
East
the
English
balance.
Village,
Sure.
exactly. Tip the balance, make those places so you don't lose those middle-class residents.
Yeah. Let's talk about Wayne County. Big headline in the Detroit News last week that said, the deficit is getting worse. Why don't we see an emergency manager in Wayne County the way we do in Detroit? Is it just politics?
I think there's a couple of reasons. It's more than just politics. I do think that the governor doesn't want both Wayne County and Detroit. It's two biggest governmental entities in the state. He doesn't want both of those in emergency management at the same time. But there's also the very real concern that the emergency manager law isn't very effective with counties.
It's not working.
It deals with the executive branch and the legislative branch. Well, in counties, particularly like Wayne County, you have other elected officials who contribute mightily to the problem and to the deficit.
Right, the sheriff,
the
prosecutor's
prosecutor,
office,
clerk, on and on. Bob Ficano controls just 1/3 of Wayne County's budget, and that's all an emergency manager would control.
Would have control
Would
of,
still
right.
have to say to Benny Napoleon, hey, you got to quit overspending. Kim Worthy, you got to quit overspending. And what's to say an EM is going to be any more effective than Ficano has?
And how important is it, though, before you go into Wayne County, to do what you can to stabilize the situation in the city of Detroit? It seems that, Wayne County is going to be a very big fish to fry down the road. Get Detroit settled, see if it works, and if you actually have something, a track record that people can point to and say, this has been effective, then you might have a little bit more political clout to go after the Wayne County problem. Because right now, Wayne County, let's be honest, they're like the Detroit Lions, a lot of self-inflicted wounds here. The jail project comes to mind. They don't often think these things through, and they fight amongst themselves quite a bit. They need to get that stabilized, and there are certain things they could do that would at least make them look like they know what they're doing.
Well, it does seem like Wayne County is different from Detroit in the sense that there's revenue to be gotten there, right? It's not completely unstable. You have healthy parts of Wayne County that should be contributing more to the county going forward. Why isn't that?
Well, they still haven't recovered the money they've lost when the property values plummeted. But property values coming back up, revenues coming in. But Wayne County still has not restructured top to bottom.
The way that the cities have in Wayne County.
Exactly.
Most of the cities have restructured their operations in some capacity. The county has yet to do it, and maybe that's sort of the last canary in the coal mine. When the county finally, when it reaches their level, they have to restructure. Maybe that's when you get a sense that they're actually tackling things.
And you still have inept leadership in the county.
Well, say,
Good
we're coming into an election year at the county level, both the commission and the executive. Are we going to see changes there?
I don't know. I mean, it depends. It's hard for me to think that Bob Ficano could run for re-election on a platform that says, well, I wasted $140 million on a jail that's never going to get finished. I squandered another $70 million on a horse racing track and on the Guardian building.
You love to bring up that horse track. You bring that up every show.
Well, for God's sakes, who builds a racehorsing track today? They're closing all over the country, and Bob thought, well, let's put $35 million of your money in it. How do you run for election on that
without
platform?
casino gaming in the place, which is what all the track operators say they need to survive in this day and age. Yeah, that is a big problem. I totally agree with you on the quality of the leadership, not to mention there's still a lot of investigations going on within the county.
Yeah, and we don't know where that's all headed.
This cloud that is hanging over the Ficano administration is so significant. Him getting reelected, but the weird thing is, I don't see anybody that's really stepping up saying, I want this job.
Well, you have Phil Cavanaugh says he's running for sure. Kevin McNamara says he's running. Bill Wild, who's the mayor of Westland, says he's in. I think one of Ficano's hopes, in fact, is that there's so many people on the Democratic side that they don't get enough votes to
It's a very old Wayne County political tactic. You load up the place with Irish names and Polish names, and you split the vote a dozen ways, and you're the incumbent and you walk through. I would hope the Republicans see the opportunity
They
here
should take a shot.
and have a good nominee lined up, because it's hard for me to believe one-on-one Ficano could beat anybody.
So does Livonia, Northville, Plymouth, places like that show up in large enough numbers to elect a Republican?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, and plus you'd have to count on the rest of Wayne County saying, we don't want any more of this guy.
Yeah. We also saw last week the state decide that it's going to go along with the national quote-unquote fix to the healthcare situation and allow people to keep the plans that they had at least through the next year. But then we saw Blue Cross the same day say, you know what? Well, we're not doing that. We got about 2 minutes, but that seems a very significant decision.
Well, and I think as goes Blue Cross, go the
As
rest
goes
of
Michigan,
the
right?
companies and say, you know what,
That's 70% of the
it's too late for us to go back and do this. And there aren't enough people who have had their plans canceled for it to be economically worthwhile for them to re-offer those policies, especially when they're in a situation where they can make more money off these same customers now. I think they'll take the money.
Well, there's 800,000 people. That's not an insignificant
Or 225,
number.
depending who you talk to.
Well, I
On
mean,
the
the
individual
numbers,
market.
the neighbors,
the individual
800,000. But it doesn't matter because it is too late. They've made the changes. They've changed the policies. To go back would add a tremendous amount of expense that's going to get passed on to consumers.
Yeah.
When Obama said, well, I'm not bailing out you insurance companies for this, I mean, who's he kidding? They're just going to pass on, as they are now, all of these costs to their policyholders.
So, but what's the long-term fix? If this is not the fix, then what are we supposed to do?
For those people who lost their policies,
Right.
I think you've got to do two things. You've got to attack cost of health care, which is something the
We still haven't
Affordable
done.
Care Act didn't even begin to do. And you're going to have to sit down and do a comprehensive fix to Obamacare. That means all stakeholders come and say, what did we do wrong and how do we get it right?
Okay.
But I think we're past the point of no return on this. We'll never go back to what we had
We can't
before.
go back
No, we've
before.
destroyed that
We just
system.
gotta
We've destroyed that
fix
system.
what we got. We can do it.
Yes,
Confident.
yes, we can.
There you go.
Yes, we can.
CC
What
Fuera.
did John Stewart say? You said, yes, we can. Well, I'm going to make mistakes like everybody else.
That's right. That's right. All right, guys. We'll continue this at another time.
Okay, thanks.
That'll do it for us on MiWeek from our Midtown studios. Check us out at MiWeek.org and find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. For all of us at Detroit Public Television, happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next week.
Business Leaders for Michigan is dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and economic growth. Learn more at businessleadersformichigan.com. Funding is also provided by Delta,